My name is Alan Burris, and I was in the Tonga Islands in the South Pacific in 1967 to 1970. And I was in the first group of people who went into Tonga. And my story is really a bit about having been there at the very beginning and then going back 20 years later to see sort of like, well, what had happened in 20 years? Well, I went back, and it was kind of a celebration in Tonga of Peace Corps in Tonga for 20 years. And so they had these, obligatory celebrations and events and little things that went on. And there was a fellow there who had a Tongan fellow, host country national, who had been in charge of the Peace Corps volunteers, and they were sort of all under his auspices. And he got up and he said, he said, I really want to thank all you people who came to our country and you worked as health volunteers and you worked as teachers and you worked with us in the fields and in agriculture and all of these things. He said, we really appreciate it and we really thank you for this. He said, but he said, you know what the biggest thing that you did for us? He said, you gave us respect for ourselves. And everybody just stopped, looked around like, well, what's he talking about? He said, it was the first time anybody had sort of lived like we did, ate like we did, spoke our language without mashing it all up with bad accents and things. And he said, you made us feel like you sort of made us feel, you gave us respect for ourselves. And what really dawned on me was one of my cohorts as a Peace Corps volunteer was a good buddy of mine, and he was stationed in the main capital and things. And one time, one of his Peace Corps projects was to have a Miss Nuku'alofa contest, and we just went, "Oh no, you got to be kidding, Dan! Miss Nuku'alofa contest? That doesn't sound very Peace Corps-like." And yet, 20 years later, when I heard this fellow say about how we had given them respect, the fact that he was saying, "You have beautiful women, and you should respect that, and you should acknowledge it, and it should be part of your culture." I thought, Dan really hit it nail on the head. Laugh at all as much as you may, about digging the ditches, and you help them with health, and you help them with food, and you help people with all this and that. Help them? Well, in some ways, it's really not about all those kinds of things. It's even simpler than that. Anyway, that's my story about Peace Corps in Tonga.
I'm Kevin Kennett. I was a volunteer in the Kingdom of Tonga from 1980 till 1982. And then we flew from Hawaii an overnight in Samoa down to Tonga.
And do you remember your first impressions or whatever when you flew to Tonga? And was it a small plane? Or did they...
Yes, it was a small plane. It was a little otter, 14-seater. No bathroom. It was a 3-hour flight over the ocean from Samoa to Tonga, and they actually, we couldn't get all our luggage on it, so they took out the lifeboat and put more luggage in, so we didn't have a lifeboat, so they could fit in, and they still didn't get all our luggage in. And I flew into this airport. It was a coral airstrip. It just had one coral stone building. Again, maybe the size of this office complex right here, but it had surrounded by palm trees, hibiscus plants going up and down.
Sounds beautiful.
They're always beautiful. It was beautiful. Then that night we went to a guest house and had a kava party, where kava is the social drink there. They drink it kind of like we drink coffee. They have before church they'd have a kava circle. After church they'd have a kava circle. Any sort of big meeting they'd have a kava circle, which is a very formal. They can have a very formal, it can be very informal. Very formal, they'll have a person designated to make the kava, which the kava is a root, and they would smash it between two stones. And then they would dump the mushed up kava into a big bowl, a wooden bowl, and then they would mix it in with water, and it would look just like muddy water is what it looked like. It was muddy water. And then they kind of strain it out, and they would have 3 or 4 coconut husks, coconut shells that they use for cups, and they would have they'd fill it up with kava, and they would have usually a young lady, 7 or 8 year old lady, take it around to everybody in the circle, and you use the same cups, and then you drink it. You take 2 hands, you drink it, and then you throw the cup back to the person making the cup.
Pete Pella. I served in the Kingdom of Tonga in the South Pacific from 1998 to 2000.
Pat Pella. We were in the Kingdom of Tonga from 1998 to 2000.